live. Yeah, people are starting to trickle in. We'll be starting shortly, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. While we're waiting for people to trickle in, why don't you, whoever's out there in the audience, just type in the chat there where you're from, like what city you're from, because I think we've got people from coast to coast here. So go ahead and just do that. And, oh, there we go. People can hear us. A lot of people from Halifax,
Awesome.
Nova Scotia. Great. New Brunswick.
Bathurst.
Milton.
Kingston, Moncton, Kitchener,
Moncton,
Grand Falls.
You got someone from Mississauga. There you go.
There you go.
Beautiful.
Halifax.
We need more Ontario people. Come on.
Fredericton.
Where are all the Ontario people? No West Coast? No West Coast representation?
Oh, Colleen from Northern City Mines. Hey, Colleen.
Milton, Ontario.
Ontarian. There you go. Hey, Dorothy and Ann. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Eric.
Oh, and Brandon.
Looks like Eddie is beating us. He's got most of the representation. But in all seriousness, guys, thanks for joining. We're happy to have you.
Hey, yeah. Stephen Feswick.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll start in a minute or so.
Brandon in the
waiting
house.
For a few more people to join us. Yeah. Brampton.
Stephen.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I think Nova Scotia is dominating here.
Nova Scotia strong.
Nova Scotia strong. That's right. All right.
I think we can get going.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get going. Okay, good. All right, so well, good evening, everybody. And thank you for joining us tonight on this webinar. Special thanks goes out to any frontline workers who may be on the call this evening. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Many of us have the privilege of staying home, but you are out there, working hard, sacrificing your own health just to keep the rest of us safe and to keep our communities going. So we couldn't be more grateful about that. For those that don't know me, my name is Lambros Demos. I'm a broker with Royal LePage, and I'm joined this evening by my co-host, colleague, good friend, partner in crime, and not your average realtor, Sam Najjar. And we are both honored to have as our special guest this evening, Canada's leading motivational speaker and best-selling author, Eddie Lemoine. Eddie is a leader and corporate trainer. He is a sought-after resource for both government and corporate clients. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Lambros. It's a pleasure to be here. We know this is an extremely challenging time for everyone, but we're happy and we're proud at the way we've come together as a community and as Canadians. We've thrown ourselves at the challenge of bringing this horrible virus to a controllable level, and it's working. We're flattening the curve, we're reducing the cases. Unfortunately, many of us are still experiencing a range of emotions, from anxiety to frustration to sadness, grief, and loss. That's why we have Eddie with us today, and we hope you are as excited as we are for this session. Not only is Eddie a successful professional speaker, his career experience as a seasoned business executive builds credibility for his topics, as he can personally relate business success stories and lessons learned throughout his 35 plus years of experience. Great to have you with us, Eddie.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Very good. So with that said, we've got a great presentation ahead, followed by a question and answer period. Eddie has prepared a short slideshow for us, but if you have any questions as we move along, please write them in the Q&A section, not the chat, because the Q&A is closely monitored, more so than the chat function. And you will find the Q&A icon along the bottom of your screen. And we will try to get to all the answers in short order following the presentation. Also, just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a copy. So don't worry if you do experience any audio or video issues, you'll get a copy of it. Or maybe you just want to see more of Eddie, and we have you covered either way. So before we get going, however, let's take a quick poll and see what everyone is experiencing these days. So I'm just going to set up a poll here on your screens. Can everybody see that?
can.
Yeah. So go ahead and choose one of the answers. How are you coping during this current lockdown? We'll give you about 30 seconds or so to put your answers in there. Oh, I see some answers
Oh, somebody's having the
coming
time of
in
their
now.
life.
Oh, yeah. So we got about 35% voted so far, 40%. Oh, votes are coming in fast and furious right now. About 60%.
Well, 4 people are still at work. 5 people are still at work.
Yeah. All right. About 80% voted. So maybe we'll wait till it gets to about 90%, and then we'll shut it down.
A lot of people see it as a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. That's a good sign. Yeah. Okay, 10 more seconds. All right, here we go. Okay, so look, you guys can see the results, I guess, on screen as well. The winner would be, this lockdown is a blessing in disguise. It has brought my spouse and family and I closer together. Well, that's a good sign, absolutely. That's great. Okay, can turn that off now.
Well, hopefully it stays that way and we don't switch to, you know, like what's happening in China. Apparently the divorce rate over there is about 25% after the lockdown.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so without further ado, let's turn it over to Eddie.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here. Just give me 1 sec.
Go ahead.
Well, first I'd like to say how happy I am to be here. And for me, it's really nice to be actually in front of an audience, even if I don't get to kind of reach out and shake your hands. And I want to do something on a very positive perspective. So I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, and then we're going to open it for a Q&A, and Lambros and Sam will ask me the questions that you guys bring in on your Q&A. And the whole idea is that we want to focus the next 25 minutes on something a lot more positive than what we've all been kind of looking at in the last little bit. For those of you who don't know me, I actually make a living as a professional speaker. So you can imagine I'm not doing a lot of speaking right now. I have a wonderful wife and 2 unbelievably great, I call them kids, but they're full grown adults. And I'm spending a lot of time with my wife, and we're seeing our kids at a bit of a distance. So by the end of this webinar, here's what I want you to walk away with. I want you to walk away with the one statement that can change your life. What's the one thing that I can say that can change your life? And the role your emotions are playing in your success. And I really think when we look at emotions right now and everything that's going on, this is really, really important. 3 steps of setting some goals that will absolutely stick. And it's a great time to set some goals. And 2 ways to accelerate that success, so that, you know, if we're going to be here in this time, is there a way that we can make this go a little bit faster? And I have to say, there's probably not a time in history that any of us that are walking on this planet would have ever had this opportunity like we have right now to hit a reset button. You know, there are a lot of us that are out at work, but the world has slowed down, and we're focusing on different things. So I think there's a very unique time, and I would suspect that everyone that's on this webinar would like to change something in their life. Maybe you want to lose a couple of pounds, or maybe you're looking for the perfect person in your life, or you're looking to improve your career. Or so what if we use this time to be able to leverage so that we can kind of work toward one of those goals that we might have? Now, I have to say how this started, and the interesting thing, the person that this all started with is actually on this call, because I saw his name flip up. But a number of years ago, I walked into the old Triangle pub in Halifax, and I'm having lunch with a client of mine. His name was Steven, and I'm telling him all of the cool things that I'm going to do over the next year. And at the time, I worked for a large aerospace company in Nova Scotia, and I'm telling him we're going to launch an airline the next year, and I'm going to take my family to Mexico, and I'm going to lose 20 pounds. And it was heading right around that, you know, Christmas time, when you're getting ready to set your resolutions for January. And Stephen looked at me and he said, Eddie, he said, you know, if you would change the way you think, your whole life would change. I looked at him and said, what are you talking about? He said, Eddie, he said, you have what I would call stinking thinking. And I said, pardon me, I have what? He said, you know, he said, in one sense, you're telling me your goals, but in the same breath, he said, you're making up excuses. You're going to launch an airline, but the cost of fuel is high and it's not going to be competitive. You're going to lose 20 pounds, but you've tried to do it before and you haven't been successful. You're going to take your family to Mexico, but you're not sure if you can get the time off. I said, Stephen, I've read all those books, Norman Vincent Peale, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra. And he looked at me and said, Eddie, there's a big difference between reading a good book and actually applying it in your life. So I went home that day and I Googled some of the stuff that Stephen and I talked about, and little did I know, the second I pressed the enter button, my life was going to change forever. It would send me down a path that would be long lasting and far reaching. And I started to notice changes. And the first change I noticed was in me physically. I went from weighing 235 pounds to 190 pounds, but I became a better husband, a better father. And then I started noticing my sphere of influence changing people around me. I could see it in my clients. I could see it in my children and my family and friends. So I want to share with you tonight some of the things that I use in my personal life, I use with my clients, and many of my family and friends use as well, that should be able to help you as we go through this kind of physical distancing and the lockdown that we tend to find ourselves in. Now, when I wrote the book, Bring About What You Think About, there were 3 areas that I really studied. The first was the science behind the way we make decisions. The second was the psychology behind it. And then the third are the unexplained things. So if we look at the pure science behind the way, and this is really important right now, especially the science part, here's what we know. When you're happy, passionate, excited, on purpose, something happens in the brain that's very, very different. The brain actually operates at a higher frequency. The body secretes serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone. You're more creative, you solve problems better, you're more active, you have better conversations. When we slip past boredom and we get into fear, anxiety, and stress, the brain actually slows down. You stop secreting serotonin and you create more cortisol. And cortisol is a fight or flight hormone. You're not as creative, you don't solve problems as well, you don't even digest your food as well. So we know that from a science perspective, when we're happy, passionate, excited, there's some magic happens in our body. And then we looked at the psychology behind the way that we make decisions. Now, when you get up this morning, you probably asked yourself a question. And you might not even have realized you did it, because we do this quite often at an unconscious level. And you might have got up this morning and said, you know, I'm not feeling very good. I'm feeling a bit down. And in a millisecond, your brain's going to look for a reason. It'll go into your unconscious mind. It'll search around. It'll come back and say, oh, you put a couple pounds on during this COVID lockdown. You've gotten a fight with your spouse the other day. Things aren't going good at work. You're a loser. Now, the psychologists call this social proof. You actually will look for proof to prove the way that you feel. You'll get in another argument with somebody. You'll get on the scale and you won't like what you see. But if you get up tomorrow and you ask yourself a different question, if you get up tomorrow and you said something like, why do I feel so good? Or why do I feel so grateful? In a millisecond, your brain will look for an answer. It'll go into your unconscious mind and it'll say, you live in a wonderful country. You're surrounded by great people. You have a lot of great things going on in your life. You're a winner. And you'll look for proof. You'll have a wonderful conversation with somebody. Something interesting and good will happen at work, or you have a great interaction with somebody. And then I looked at those unexplained things, and you know the ones that when you think about somebody and they appear in your life, and I had one happen just the other night. I literally dreamed about somebody, and the next day they showed up on my Facebook. Now, I don't know if there's any way that Facebook is looking into my dreams, but it's somebody I hadn't seen in years. Well, let me share with you an example of one that happened that always stuck out in my mind. A number of years ago, I was in Toronto speaking at a very prestigious event called the $1 Million Roundtable, and it's the top 1% of insurance reps from around the world. And after the conference was over, everybody headed back to their respective countries, and there's about 8,000 people that attend this conference, and there's a young lady heading back to Vietnam, and she had a connecting flight at the LAX airport. When she arrives at the LAX airport, she decides she wants to buy a cup of coffee, and she goes to Starbucks. When she gets to Starbucks, she orders herself a medium cup of coffee. Now, Starbucks don't sell medium coffee. they sell grande, and grande doesn't even mean medium. So anyway, she gets a grande and she looks at it and she goes, oh my goodness, this is way too much coffee for me. Unbeknown to her, there are 3 young ladies in the lineup behind her in the same connecting flight to Vietnam. And they looked at her and they said, why don't we do this? Why don't we order ourselves 2 cups of coffee? We'll ask them for an empty cup and we'll share the coffee among the 4 of us. So they sat down at the table and they started to share their coffee. And the young lady that left the conference that I spoke at, she said, I'm flying back to Vietnam. She said, I live in a city in Vietnam. She said, but that's not where I grew up. She said, I grew up in a very, very poor village. She said, in fact, we were so poor growing up that after my parents had 8 children, they gave the kids away. And she said, I was given away and I was raised by another family. There's another lady at the table and she looked at her and she had kind of a confused look on her face. And she said to her, she said, you know what? She said, I'm actually from the same village. Very similar situation to you. We gave kids away as well. She said, but unlike you, she said, I was raised by my biological parents, which was a very common thing in that village. At a chance meeting at the LAX airport, they discovered they were sisters. So I said to myself, well, what if it didn't matter whether it was science, psychology, something that we couldn't explain? Was there a process or a statement or something that I could do that would make more things go in my favor? And it all comes down to one statement. Wherever you focus your attention and you put energy toward it, you're going to bring more of that into your life. And that is the one statement that can absolutely change your life. Because if you think about it, wherever you focus your attention, and you put energy, and that energy can be passion or engagement or whatever form of energy you put into it, you're going to actually bring more of that into your life. So let me kind of dig into that a little bit. When we talk about where our attention is, you're having internal conversations. And those internal conversations are shaping your future. And they're subtle, and you don't even know you're having them. And every single internal conversation you have does one of 2 things. It moves you toward achieving your goals, or it moves you away from achieving your goals. So we want to really start to think about, what are we thinking about? And I have to say, when we look at all of the stuff that's happening around us, our thoughts are being dragged away from achieving our goals into more about worrying things, which leads me to the next part. It's wherever we focus our attention and we put energy towards. So if you think of energy as what's behind your emotions, behind your thoughts, when we're happy, passionate, excited, we know from a science perspective, our brain works better, we're more creative, we solve problems better. When we pass boredom and get into fear, anxiety, and stress, what literally happens when we're under stress or we're fear, or we have this level of fear in our life, we literally push our goals away from us. So when we're happy, passionate, excited, we tend to bring our goals into our life. So we have to become very, very conscious where our thoughts are and the amount of time that we actually spend on things that create more fear and anxiety, the amount of time we spend watching television. My wife and I have a pact. We don't watch television, the news at all through the weekend. We spend that time with each other, and we know that there is news going on, but we can worry about that on Monday. So now I have this unbelievable job. I get to travel all over the country and all over North America, and I talk to people from around the world, and I have met the absolute best people in every single industry you can think of, from school teachers to nurses to doctors to funeral directors. I have never met anyone who has made it to the top by complaining. I've never seen it happen. I have seen people get ahead by complaining. My dad would even have a saying. He would say, a squeaky wheel gets grease. And I think if you complain enough, you'll get something, Tuesday afternoon off or a 75-cent raise. But long-lasting happiness and success comes from 2 things: focusing your attention on the outcome and creating the right emotions to attract that into your life. So how do we make it work? I want to share with you 3 steps in goal setting that will make goal setting much, much easier for you. And the first step, and sometimes a difficult step, is you have to figure out what area of your life that you want to set goals in. And there's 2 ways you can do that. The first way, you got to listen to your emotions. And interestingly enough, you have to listen to your negative emotions. You know, we often always think that we have to be positive all the time, but your negative emotions actually serve a purpose. Your negative emotions tell you the area of your life you want to change. And I'll give you some examples. if you got on the scale and you felt some fear or some stress or some anxiety around the weight that you might weigh, or you walk up a flight of stairs and you're huffing and puffing and tired, it's telling you want to be more healthy. So your goal is the opposite of the thing that you feel negative about. If you're having a hard time, paying your bills, the opposite is bringing abundance into your life. If you walk into a room and you feel fear, anxiety, and stress when you're around a certain person, it's telling you that you need to either improve that relationship, or maybe that relationship isn't the right one. And I don't mean that in light terms. Obviously, if that is your son or your mother or your sister or your best friend, it means that you want to work on the relationship. But some of us have people in our life that are actually not serving us well, that may be hurting us. So focus only on your negative emotions to identify your goals, and try and spend more time on the positive side of things. Now, the positive emotions will tell you the areas of your life you're excelling at, and that can become part of your goals as well. And then the second thing is, I write a dream sheet. Now, there's some things you'll write on your dream sheet, which are your goals, that you don't have to feel in your emotions. There are things that I want to buy a new house. I want to buy a car. I want to go to university. I want to have children. I want to get married. Like, there are some things we just kind of know. So we're going to write those on a dream sheet. Now, the interesting thing with it, when you write something down, if you did nothing else, if you got nothing out of this session tonight, other than this one thing, if you wrote your goals on a piece of paper and you read them every day for 30 days, and 6 months from now, your life will be completely different. And the reason being is, after about 25 days, what you have on your dream sheet becomes impregnated in your unconscious mind. And the brain has a function called RAS, and it'll look for clues even when you're not paying attention. And I'll give you an example, because you've all experienced this. Maybe you decide you're going to buy a new car, and you decide, I think I'm going to buy myself a Honda Civic. You will notice every Honda Civic on the road. They were all on the road before, but now you notice them because they're relevant. So once you impregnate that information into your unconscious, it'll look for clues to help you achieve your goals, even when you're not paying attention. So that was step one. Step two, you got to believe you can do it. I mean, if you look at any area of your life where you're knocking it out of the park, it's because you believe you can do it. If you're a golfer, for example, and you walk on the golf course and you're going to hit a 90 something, and you've played in the 90s many, many times, you believe you can do it. So when you walk on the golf course, you have a pretty good chance of hitting that score in the 90s. I, on the other hand, have never broke 100. Not on all 18 holes, maybe on the first 9 holes, I would have broken 100. So I wouldn't have that level of belief. So I believe your goal should be a stretch, but it should also be something you can believe you can do, because the belief is the fuel to allow you to be able to achieve your goals. That was step two. Step three, and this is the one that I think most people struggle with the most, is you have to be receptive, which means you have to let the goal come into your life. You have to not sabotage it. I think a lot of people can identify their goals. I think a lot of people believe they can do it. I think most of us fail at this one, at the receptivity. Now, if we were spending more time together, I go a lot deeper in the receptivity, but let me just simplify it for you. In order to achieve your goals, you have to be the person that you would be as if you already had the goal. Now, I'll give you an example. When I weighed 235 pounds, I wasn't the person I needed to be to weigh 190 pounds. In fact, I wrote it on a piece of paper. I wrote a list of all the things that Eddie would have to do to maintain this beautiful body at 235 pounds. And next to it, I wrote a list of all of the things I would have to do to maintain this body at 190 pounds. The lists were completely different. I wasn't that person. I didn't walk 10,000 steps a day. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't eat properly. So if I just acted like the 190-pound version, before you know it, I was 190 pounds. And that's what being receptive is. You have to be the person. Because think about it, any area of your life where you're already doing well, it's because you're exactly who you need to be doing well. The area of our life where we struggle, it's just that we haven't figured out how to be the right person yet. So that was step three. Now, I did promise you 2 ways to accelerate it. The first way to accelerate it is to give more. Now, here's the rub on the giving. You want to give in the area of your life you're lacking the most. And that's almost like a cruel joke that's played on us. And just think about it. The area of your life where you're really doing well, it's because you're giving it 100%. I mean, think about if you're in great physical health, it means you're giving your body the water it needs, the nourishment, the exercise, the care, the pruning, all of the things you need to be healthy. But if you look at the area of your life where you might not be getting the results that you want, you have to take an honest look and say, am I giving it 100% in that area? So look at the area of life where you're lacking and give in that area. And I know one of the things that we're all going to probably struggle with as we go through this will be even our finances. So, you know, and you would sit there and think, well, Eddie, well, how can I give when I don't have anything coming in? But you can give a kind word, you can give your time, you can volunteer. And I got to say, you know, I know there are people from all over the country. I'm here in Nova Scotia right now. We've had some horrific things happen here in Nova Scotia. The amount of giving that has happened in this province has been absolutely unbelievable, and the same right across Canada. So even when we're in our worst time, we can give, and it helps lift us up and moves us up that scale. And the last thing is to live in an attitude of gratitude. Now, the interesting thing with gratitude, if you think of the title of my book, Bring About What You Think About, if you focus on things to be grateful for, you actually will bring more things to be grateful for into your life. And they say that gratitude is the most powerful emotion that the human spirit has beyond love. So I have triggers that I use. I have a pen that I carry with me that a group of employees gave me a number of years ago, and I've signed every book that I've ever sold with that pen. I've signed contracts with it. When I purchase something, I sign it with that book. And every time I touch that pen, I think of something to be grateful. And I wear a little bracelet with beads on it, and I count the beads, kind of like you would do, almost like a prayer bead, but I'm not a Catholic. And you will count the beads, and every bead I think of something to be grateful. Because if you think about it, if you did this tomorrow morning and you did it tonight before you went to bed, if you said, what am I so grateful for? Your brain will actually start to search for things to be grateful. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, I want to give you a couple things. You know, when I first wrote the book, Bring About What You Think About, in the book, several times through it, I talk about stress, but it wasn't until I actually really started coaching people and working with different organizations and working with people on the book that I realized how big a deal that stress really was, and how stress can absolutely rob us of our goals. I don't think there's anything that will rob us of our goals more than stress. It robs us of our health, of our relationships, of our careers. So a couple of years ago, I created a stress management program, and we would, up until the COVID, we actually sold this program, but we've offered this free. And what it is you'll actually have access to an online course that we have in an online campus. And you can identify your stressors, identify ways of dealing with them. I think it's a great program right now, because I always think, if I look at fear, anxiety, and stress on one side of a scale and happy, passionate at other on the other, how am I going to get there? And one of the ways is to help reduce the stress. So you're going to get an email from Lambros, and you're probably going to get an email from me to be able to sign up for that. It's absolutely free. And I would recommend that you share that with your family and friends as well. The other thing that I'm going to suggest is we have this little video series called Inspirational Mondays. Every couple of weeks, you get a little video. It's based on the book. They're great to share with your staff. And we're going to send you a link that you can sign up for that as well. And the last thing that I want to mention is, if you want to take this to another level, and just before we open for Q&A, I created an online program to go along with the book. And we're going to do something we've never, ever done before. So it's a series of videos. And the way it works is you get an email and you get a lesson to do. I tell you to read a chapter in the book. And then we go back and forth. Because of COVID-19, and I've never done this before because authors don't normally ever do this. If you're interested in the program, we're actually going to send you free PDF copy of the book rather than the book. And the challenge with this from an author's perspective is you can't control the book, but it's a wonderful way to do the program because you can print all kinds of copies of it, write all over it, and sit down and do it with your family. And I just think it's a great way, especially if you're in a couple, to work together. And there's another real cool thing we're going to do as part of this, and that's has been in the program before, but I spoke in Toronto to the Catholic Principals Association earlier this year, and they did a fantastic job of videotaping it. We're going to place that video up on there, and there'll be a 1-hour video on the program as well, and a bunch of other material. So look, I just want to wrap up with one quick thing. You know, why I do this. A number of years ago, my wife and I decided we wanted to have children. I always think of, you know, is there a time in my life where somebody had a big impact on me? And sometimes people just kind of zip into your life and have this big impact and you didn't even see it coming. And for me, we decided we wanted to have children, and we tried and couldn't. And after a while, I said to my wife, I said, look, if this is meant to be, it's going to happen. And I bet you a month later, she was pregnant. We lived in Alberta at the time. We were home with my brother and his wife at Christmas time. Tanya fell down a flight of stairs and lost a baby in the miscarriage. And I have to say, I've never experienced anything like that. You know, we went back to Alberta about 3 months later. Tanya got pregnant again, and we did all of the things, you know, what to expect when you're expecting: baby names, baby showers, flew both mothers out for the birth of the baby. And middle of the night, Tanya wakes up and she goes, "It's time." And I said, "It's time for what?" She says, "It's time to go." And I rushed her off to the hospital. And after 36 hours of labor, my wife went into duress, and we had to have an emergency C-section. And I remember thinking that our baby would be a screamer. I grew up in Cape Breton playing the guitar and singing, and I see this very quiet baby, and I'm thinking, it's not mine. So I walk into the room, and there's a nurse in there, and she said, "Are you Mr. Lemoyne?" I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Congratulations, you have a baby girl, but we need to run a couple tests." I went out and I told the two mothers that to wait a little bit. We went upstairs, we got some fish and chips and balloons and banners and cups, and I went back down and walked in the room where our daughter was, and this doctor came over and she said, "Are you Mr. Lemoyne?" I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "I'm afraid I have bad news." She said, "Your baby was born with massive pneumonia, streptococcal B, has a less than a 5% chance of surviving." I've never experienced anything like that. I walked in the room where my wife was. I don't think I ever cried a tear in my life till that day. And when I walked in the room, once I saw her, I lost it. Now, for men who have never cried, I'm a basket case for the rest of my life. Extreme Home Makeover, when they move that bus, I cry that hard, I can't even see the television. But after about 3 days, the doctor said, "Eddie, put the birth announcement in the paper." She said, "Everything's going to be okay." And I looked at her and I said, "What did you do?" She said, "Your daughter's a miracle. I'll give you that right now." She said, "But I was in Toronto at a CMA conference, and we learned of experimental procedure, and we tried that on your daughter. And that's why she's alive." Now, you just spent 25 minutes with me. I don't have that. I don't have any kind of magic potion or an injection that I can give you. But you know what? If you get off this call and, you know, you hug your kids or hug your spouse, or you can't be hugging anyone else because you have to stay in your house, or just focus more on the good and gratitude and where you want to go, then I have done my little part in this 25-minute time with you to move you in the right direction. And for that, I'm absolutely grateful. And I thank you so much for listening. And now I'm going to get rid of this screen and we're going to open it up for some questions.
Wow, Eddie, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all that. That was awesome. And I just want to quick note here. Quick shameless plug. Eddie's book is right here. Yes. Why I love this book so much is because it's not just something that you read. It's a workbook as well. So, and that's what I really liked about because there's some exercise in there you can do. So I really enjoyed it to be sure. So
awesome. Thank you. Great content. Looks like we've got a question here from Debbie.
We do have a question from Debbie. So Sam, do you want to go ahead and ask that question to Eddie?
So Eddie, the question is, I wonder if you can speak about how a person can have amazing success in one area of life and not gain much traction in another area.
You know, it's funny, and I think we all do that. I think we all have that ability to have a level of success in a certain area of your life, and maybe struggle in other areas. And I always try and use the emotion I get from the area that I'm succeeding in to help me in the areas that I might be struggling in. So in my particular case, I put a lot of energy and effort into my career, and that's an area that I excel at. There's an area of my life I always struggle with, and it's my health. And it's normally because I don't put as much effort into my health side of it. So when I readjust my attention to that. So, you know, for me, it's always focus your attention on the goal and the area of your life you want to make changes, create the right emotions around that, and some magic will happen that will allow you to move in that direction. But for me, it's always focusing your attention. And there's two kind of keys to look for. One is focus your attention on your goal and not the lack of it, because whatever you tend to focus your attention on, you tend to create more of that. So if you're creating on the lack of it. And the other is become unattached. And there's two forms of becoming unattached. One is become unattached to how something might happen in your life. So if you think it has to happen a certain way, there might be another possibility to allow that to happen. And the other is become unattached to whatever's holding you where you are right now. So you can't move on to the next relationship if you're attached to a relationship you're in, even if you're not physically in that relationship anymore, if you're emotionally attached. You can't move on to the next step in your career if you're attached to doing it a certain way right now. You can't move on to being more healthy if you're attached to a lifestyle you have right now. So my thing is focus your attention on the outcome, be as optimistic and positive, and always be focusing on that, and watch the areas of attachment.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That's
Hopefully
very
that
good,
answers your question, Debbie.
Yeah, we have more questions coming in right now. So Valerie from Brampton is, first of all, she says, thank you, Eddie. That was awesome. I am extremely overwhelmed and have 6, 4, and 2-year-olds at home. I am very sad that my kids are not able to be at school. Do you have tips to help my kids with the roller coaster of emotions they are feeling right now?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this session tonight, because I know a lot of people are really stressed right now. And I have the tools. Like, I have been doing this for years. I've been reading about personal development since 2005. I've been on stage since 2005. And even I struggle during these times. And I always go back to the basic things. I look at things to be grateful for, and I focus on gratitude to move my emotions up. I look for ways to change my mood. And, there's a kind of a neat little thing that happens in our brain, but our brain has the ability to create a hormone called oxytocin. And one of the ways we get oxytocin is, they call it the cuddle hormone. Actually, it's closeness. So when we're close to each other. And I think what a lot of people are missing right now is, in the case of our kids, or, getting out and playing with their friends or seeing their grandparents. And if you can't get that physical contact, or I would look for other ways to create oxytocin, reaching out to people, talking to people, having as much time with your kids as you possibly can. I know it's a struggle. Always be trying to find ways to be happy, passionate, excited, and grateful. It's the only tool that we really have at our disposal to move us in that direction.
That's
Awesome.
great.
Yeah, very good.
So this next one is a shout out from Denise Ryu. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I have the book, read it, and have listened to his 8 videos, and I strongly recommend. So there you go, Eddie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Nice.
Thanks. Well, you'll have to log back in, Denise, to the online section in about a day or so. We'll have that 1-hour video up there as well. I think you'll enjoy it.
Awesome. That's great. And another Valerie, Valerie Dubois, I understand how feeling the negative can show you where you need to focus to change, but is there a trick to switching from those negative feelings to the positive?
Valerie, I haven't heard from you in a long time. That is a great question. And I should have probably mentioned it when we talked about it. What I do is when I worry about something or you have a trigger, and that's kind of the neat thing with the free stress program will do, it'll help you identify what your triggers are. Once you identify what a trigger is and I create the goal, the key then is to focus on the goal, not on the opposite of the goal, so that your emotions are toward achieving the level of success. So what I do in my mind, and I've been at this for a long time, is if I stress about something, I worry about something, I look for what's causing that stress. I come up with a goal on the opposite side, and then I shut it down. So I always focus my emotion. And to be totally truthful, and a lot of people that are watching this, it's a trick that I do. I trick myself into being happy. So I look for things that make me feel happy. My wife and I go for a walk every day. I hug my wife all the time. I look at what's around me that can move me away from that fear, anxiety, and stress. So don't dwell in it. I think it's important to understand it, but I think that you just figure your goal out from there, shut it down, and then look at the opposite side or the positive side.
That's great.
Awesome.
Some more questions here. We've got Dorothy from Mississauga. Is being unattached the same as being open to change?
Well, I think being open to change can help create being unattached. If I looked at when I tried to lose the weight and I was 235 pounds, I was literally attached to the lifestyle of 235-pound version of Eddie. I was attached to the type of food that I was eating, the lack of exercise, the way I felt. And in order to achieve the weight of 190 pounds, what I had to do would be to become unattached to the lifestyle, and then to become more attached to the lifestyle of the 190-pound version. So the open to possibilities is a key part, but becoming unattached will allow you to be open to the opportunities.
That's great. Very good. And we have Carmen. Carmen is also from Brampton. Just a shout out to Carmen. How you doing, man? What are the main areas of my life I should be focused on setting goals?
Well, Carmen, that's a very personal question. It really comes down to you, the areas of your life that you want to make changes. When I do a dream sheet, I kind of divide it into categories. So I do personal, spiritual, physical, work, finance. So you look at and there'll be certain areas of your life where you'll want to spend more time. And I always think of it kind of like a wheel. If you had a wheel with a bunch of spokes, it's important to spend time in every area. So it's no good to be financially successful and emotionally broke, or to have a great career and be unhealthy. I think it's important that we kind of focus on all areas. Now, I don't mind sharing my age. I'm 58 years old. When you're younger, you tend to get away with things. So you might not have to focus on your health as much when you're in your 20s, but then you pay that price when you're in your 40s. So for me, it's always a rounded approach. Am I spending enough time with my family and my friends and my career and my health? And I really make time for all of it. Like for me, walking, going to the gym, eating healthy, that's all a very important part of my career as well, because it gives me the energy to keep up with the flights and the travel and all the other things. So I look at every area of your life and then find goals in each one of those areas. And you set goals for two reasons. One is goals for specific outcomes. So here's what I want to achieve. And the other type of goal is to change a habit. So a specific outcome might be to weigh 190 pounds, and the habits might be your dietary habits or your exercise routine. So kind of focus on those two areas.
That's great. Another shout out, Eddie, from Colleen McGean. I really enjoyed listening to you, Eddie. Love how you speak, and I would love to see you live sometime. I also read your book, and now is a part of my huge collection of books. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you,
Awesome.
Colleen.
Thank you, Colleen.
It's great to hear from you. Awesome. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, so Denise is asking another question. I have recently lost the love of my life to cancer. So sorry, Denise, to hear that. And have been enormously struggling with having to accept this. We were always together and did everything together. This may be off context, but I would appreciate any recommendations you might have to offer.
Well, and it's funny because I think this person's online now. I started to keep a gratitude journal years ago. The very first day I wrote in the gratitude journal, my best friend's mother passed away. And I'm thinking, what could I write in this gratitude journal today when everyone's world seemed to be so upside down. And when I go back and I look at that first page of the gratitude journal, it was the kindness and love that we felt from the people around us. People showed up with food. There were so many things to be grateful for. And I lost a very close friend of mine last year to cancer as well. And it's the first really close person in my life that I lost. And we did a celebration of his life afterwards. And, for me, it's always been focusing on what was so great about that person. Every day there's going to be pain. Eventually the pain will get less. And it's almost like changing the temperature in the room. You turn the thermostat and more warmth will come in. And over time that will happen. But, focus on your friends, close to people, hug people, forgive people, do everything you can to bring more gratitude and love into your life. And I think you'll find that will help you as best as it can in this unbelievable time for you, I'm sure.
That's amazing. That's great advice, Eddie. Good.
All right. We've got a question from Tammy Carroll. Great talk, so articulate. Any thoughts on how to best support someone who is struggling but saying they don't need help?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It is really hard to get someone else to do something when they're not ready. Lots of times people will say, Eddie, I need my husband to do this, or I need my wife to do this. In fact, one of the things we often hear after one of these talks is, I wish my husband was with me, or wish my wife or my children or my mother. You can't change the way a person thinks, but you can introduce thought patterns into their life. So, focusing more on what's positive, be more grateful, be more caring, and hopefully move them, along with you. But, when I wrote the book, Bring About What You Think About, it really is our internal thoughts. That's the one thing I did discover. It is really hard to get someone else to do something when they're not ready for it. And my friends know, because I walk the walk. I live this life. When you read my book, I am that person. And a lot of my friends over time have kind of got on side, but not all of them. And that's the challenge is how do we get people to move along? So really it's for yourself. But if you can introduce this to other people or get them to even, they don't have to read my book, but read that type of material, I think you'll find they'll start to move in that direction.
Very good. So Angela, also from Brampton, she has a question here. I enjoyed the speech, says. Most of your points are the same or similar to my philosophy of life and how I handle situations. I had to overcome many difficulties in my life, especially as a single mother of 3. I believe I really did it because I am an optimist and take a positive stand. I particularly appreciated your reference to, seems the rest of your question might be cut off there, Angela. So if you want to type the rest of your question in, we can answer it. But while we're on that point of Angela's point here, I just want to ask you something real quick, Eddie. She's talking about being positive all the time, and I think I'm a positive person as well. But you said in your presentation that negative emotions are important. So can you speak more about that?
Well, I think negative emotions are important to identify areas of our life that we want to make changes in. So, and I'm not one of those people that believe you just have to be positive all the time and wonderful things will happen. I believe being positive does create wonderful things that happen in your life, but I do believe that your negative thoughts have a purpose. They help identify areas of your life that you want to make some changes. The problem is too many people dwell in those areas. They dwell in the negative and they don't see the value in it. They just dwell in it. So, well, I just want to mention something that Angela just in her comments. Most people that are successful in areas of their life use this. they do this. They focus their attention on the outcome. They're excited when they do it. They're passionate. You know, entrepreneurs that I know that love their jobs and they can't wait to go to work. They don't, it's not like we identify and say, oh, we're using these steps. You know, here's my goal. I believe I can do it. I am the person I need to be. And I think Angela kind of hit the nail on the head when she said, I'm positive I do these things, because if you look at successful people or successful people in certain areas of life, they are because they do those things. And that's what's kind of really neat about it.
Okay. So Angela is, she actually finished off the question here. What she went to say was, I particularly appreciated your reference to the value of giving and gratitude. So it's more of a comment than a question. So
Thank you so
Angela.
much. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Angela, for that.
We've got a comment here as well from Denise, thanking you again, Eddie. And we've got a question from Valerie Dubois about gratitude journal apps. Do you think the mode you use, type versus handwritten, makes a difference?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting. Different personalities respond differently. So if you're more of a kinesthetic person, so a feely, touchy person, you know, like to hold hands, like to hug, those types of things, physically writing something is better. So the way I do it is there's a couple things I do. When I'm doing a dream sheet, I physically write it, and then I put it in a document that I have on the cloud, and I could, if I'm in this line at Starbucks, if I ever get to go to Starbucks again, I might pull my dream sheet out and kind of look at it. So for me, I do a little bit of both. I do some from that kinesthetic perspective, write it down, and then I'll put it in some form of a cloud. And your goals can change. You know, you might have a goal right now, and 3 months from now, things are different. Don't worry about taking goals off your list either.
You make a reference to dream sheets. Why do you use the dream? And that's a question from me, actually. Why do you use dream sheets as opposed to vision boards?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I could see your vision board behind you on the wall.
Right.
So, and I'll tell you why I believe more in dream sheets and vision boards. I think they both work really, really good. If you think of a scale, fear, anxiety, and stress on one side, happy, passionate, excited on the other. If I put something on a vision board and I put it behind my cubicle at work, and maybe, maybe I was single, it would be Angela Jolene, maybe that would be my dream person, or a certain type of car, or a certain house. And my friends might come in and say, that ain't ever going to happen. You know, all the good people are taken. You're never going to find another person like that. There's no way you're ever going to get a car like that. Now I have to overcome their opposition. So rather than being happy, passionate, excited, and believing in myself, now I have to convince them why those goals are important to me and why I think I can do it. Now, my wife and I, we share our goals with each other because I really trust her and she's my soulmate. But we don't all have people like that. Now, you have people like that in your life, and that's why the vision board works for you. But if you have people around you that don't believe in you, then I would keep it as a dream sheet. A dream sheet doesn't offend anyone. A vision board, you just kind of have to watch from it from that perspective, that you have to overcome other people's opposition.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that was great. And we're doing really well for time here as well. It's 7:55, and I don't see any more questions coming in.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah. So did you have any, I know you don't like the word closing, closing words, any, oops, there goes my light here.
Oh, you blew the fuse.
Yeah, I blew the fuse.
It happens.
Anything?
I hope in my heart that this has helped a little bit. Every time we turn the television on, there's just so much negative stuff out there. And if anything I talked about tonight can help kind of move you in that direction, then I'm so grateful. And I'm actually really grateful just to have this opportunity to talk to a group of people, even if I can't see you, because I've really missed being around people, and this is the next best thing that we have right now.
Yeah, awesome. So Valerie's asking a follow-up question here. She says, I've seen vision boards. What's a dream sheet? So you want to just explain more about what a dream sheet is?
Sure. A dream sheet is and there's actually a trick to this. So a dream sheet is a list of all of the things that you want to achieve in the future, big and small. Everything from your vacations to education to your physical health. And there's a couple tricks to doing this. And one is to write the items on your dream sheet in present tense. So I like to write them in after the words I am. So I am enjoying weighing 190 pounds. I am enjoying a vacation with my family in Mexico, doing that type of things, because a couple of things happen is you'll trick the brain into working harder if it believes it already has it, because it works hard to maintain the things that it already has. And if you put it after the words I am are two of the most powerful words in the English language. And everything we put after I am, we start to create. So if you think about it, I am tired. I am hungry. I am a great father. I am a wonderful person. Whatever we put after those I ams, and if you get up in the morning and go, oh, I am tired, you almost create being tired. But if you get up in the morning and say, I'm in a great mood, I feel great. So do it in the present tense, and I would write as many things on the dream sheet as you can, and then you fine tune that down to the goals that are most important to you. When I coach people, dream sheet is the very first thing I do.
Awesome. Awesome. Also, I want to go back to something you mentioned in the presentation about being receptive to achieving goals. Wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Well, it's there's kind of 5 things in being receptive, but the basic underlining thing with being receptive is you have to be the person you would be as if you had already had it. And if you look at any area of your life where you're doing really well, it's because you are the exact type of person that you need to be. And sometimes if you haven't achieved the level of success in the area of your life that you want right now, and this could even go back to Debbie's comment about, I succeed in certain areas of my life and I don't in other. We have to become the person we need to be in that area of our life to have that level of success. So for me, it's when I'm not doing something, when I'm not achieving something, I always kind of look and say, am I the person I need to be? Am I doing everything I need to do to achieve that? Now, I can go really deep into this, but I hope that'll answer your question a little bit right now.
Yeah, it does. It's great. Yeah. Thank you, Eddie. Thanks for clearing that up. And Denise has a comment, act as if you have already received it will bring positive things. Yes, exactly. That goes to what you were saying about writing things down as I am this and right. I am that. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah, excellent. So that was great. We're getting a lot of thank yous and comments in the chat as well. And I too want to extend my thanks to you, Eddie, again. It was a fantastic presentation. I know I really enjoyed it, and I hope our audience enjoyed it. Sam, did you want to
chime in? It was great. Thank you, Eddie.
Okay.
Appreciate your time, and thanks to everyone for attending as well. Hopefully, you get a lot from the presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.